Hello and welcome to World News Program streaming to you live on All 24 News. I'm your host Islam Sid, and up next are the top stories. Zionist occupation army commits 3 massacres, leaving 24 martyrs, and on the 257th day of the genocidal war on Gaza. UN Commission confirms Zionist obstruction in Gaza and West Bank. Hamas cites new evidence of occupation crimes. Reports 40 children dead from hunger amid worsening famine. That's next. Amid warnings of regional war, Hassan Nasrallah asserts Zionist occupation hides its losses. Southern Lebanon front has frozen Zionist economy. Putin and Kim sign strategic partnership including defense treaty. Putin praises North Korea's support for Russian policies, while Kim Jong-un sees meeting as a chance to enhance strategic ties with Moscow. We'll be back after the break. Stay tuned. Hello again to the program. First in our news file, the Ministry of Health in Gaza reported that the occupation committed 3 massacres against families, killing 24 and injuring 71 during the past 24 hours. This brings the toll of the aggression to rise to 37,396 martyrs and 85,523 injuries since the 7th of last October. This comes as the Zionist entity continue its land, air and sea aggression against the Gaza Strip, which enters its 258th consecutive day today, Thursday. Zionist forces renewed airstrikes on displaced persons tents in the Mawasi area of southern Gaza, northwest Rafah, resulting in dozens killed and injured. Reports indicate fires, casualties, with local sources suggesting a possible massacre. Hussein Burkan reports.
In Rafah, south of the Gaza Strip, under the cover of night, the occupation army perpetrated another horrific massacre in the Mawasi area, northwest of Rafah. Occupation aircraft bombed the tents of the displaced, resulting in numerous casualties.
My granddaughter was living next to her parents in a tent. That is my daughter's husband's sister. They heard the shelling, so they ran. My daughter's husband tried to save his sister's husband, so they bombed him. His father went to save him. They hit him. And when the boy came out, they also hit him.
The barbaric bombings reignited memories of a similar atrocity over a month ago, where occupation forces targeted tents of displaced people west of the city, killing dozens of Palestinians, including children, most of whom were burned to death.
What happened to us began with gunfire for over half an hour. Suddenly there was a fire. We don't know the cause, whether from planes or artillery, because we were all asleep in the tents. When we came out, we found our cousin almost burnt. He is currently in intensive care in Deir al-Balah. Children were screaming in horror. It was a very difficult situation.
The occupation, feeling the impact of the resistance strikes, resorted to revenge on those who had fled the bombing, intentionally targeting the displaced. The Khayyam massacre in Rafah once again disapproves the occupation claims of a safe area in Gaza. This new evidence clearly shows that the occupation's declared war on Gaza is a war on all Palestinians, aimed at emptying the Strip of its people.
6 Palestinians, including children and women, were killed and others were injured in a Zionist bombing that targeted a house in the Sheikh Ridwan neighborhood north of Gaza City. A number of civilians were also killed and injured in an occupation bombing that targeted the tents of displaced people in Al-Mawasi area northwest of the city of Rafah.
After a residential unit of Abu Safiya family was targeted, we recovered the bodies of some martyrs and injured and took them to Al Mahmadani Medical Complex. We mostly transported human remains and some women were burnt to death following the Israeli bombing of the apartment.
Navy Pillai, chair of the Commission of the Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, reported that the Zionist entity obstructed the investigation and blocked access to Gaza and the West Bank. Shocked by the humanitarian suffering in Gaza, she stated that the occupation is the root cause of the issues in the Palestinian territories. Pillai affirmed that the Commission will continue its work as the investigation remains ongoing.
Israel has obstructed the Commission's investigations and prevented its access not only to Israel and Gaza, but to the occupied Palestinian territory. So it's true that our work in the investigation, collection and safeguarding of evidence has been hampered. It's not what we would like to do, which is go to the ground and talk to witnesses ourselves.
Izzat Rishq, a member of Hamas's political bureau, warned of deteriorating humanitarian conditions in Gaza. He stated that dozens of children have died from hunger, while hundreds face the risk of death due to malnutrition and lack of supplements and vaccinations. Let's take a listen.
While Muslims around the world celebrate Eid al-Adha, our people in the Gaza Strip are living a real tragedy as they suffer from hunger and thirst amid the ongoing massacres committed by the Nazi occupation against them. 40 children died of hunger in Gaza, while 3,500 other children face the risk of death due to malnutrition and lack of nutritional supplements and vaccines. We call on the international community and the Islamic world to provide urgent humanitarian support to the people of Gaza who are suffering from harsh living conditions and are searching for the simplest things to stay alive.
Greek foreign minister stated that Europe should host children affected and injured by the war in Gaza. In an interview with Reuters, he emphasized the urgent need to address the tragedy impacting these children and affirmed that Europe must remain open to receive those injured from Gaza.
We have offered to host the injured and children from Palestine so that they can come to Europe and stay here until the end of the war. This is a clear call for humanitarian aid. We are not speaking here about economic migration or any other kind of illegal migration. What we are debating is a legal process that allows the people who are in a dire situation to receive adequate treatment so that they could return home in a better condition. And the truth is that we have sustained serious losses in human lives, and we cannot afford losing more, especially when it comes to the injured and children.
To a different world news, Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah stated on Wednesday that the Zionist entity is concealing its losses and fears escalation affecting its war against Gaza. He added that southern Lebanon's front has disrupted Zionist economy. Speaking at memorial for a member killed in Zionist airstrike, Nasrallah said occupying Israel's deterrence is collapsing. Its army seems defeated, and many military positions along the Lebanon border have been evacuated.
Ever since we declared it a support front until today, it continues its operations and continues inflicting human, material, and psychological losses to the enemy. Of course, the latter is cautious to hide its dead and wounded in the northern front. In Gaza, it generally admits it, and there is a reason for that. This is not the time for explanation. In the northern front, however, it doesn't admit or rarely, and it's also for a reason, as he doesn't want to turn the northern front into a front that puts pressure on the Israeli government and the cry we are hearing from the enemy's political and military leaders.
Hezbollah Secretary General confirmed that the Lebanese front used some weapons and acquired new ones. He noted that the party has extensive information, with recent publications being just a small part of hours of footage from Haifa. Let's take a listen.
لدينا كم كبير جدا 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 من المعلومات.
We have huge quantities of information. The 9 minutes or so which were broadcast yesterday are chosen out of several hours in Haifa. It is not just a few minutes, but long hours. But if you give long hours to media, what will they do? It will choose. Of course, we have fought using part of our weaponry so far. We have acquired new weapons and I'm not revealing them. We will see them in the field when decisions will be taken. We have developed some of our weapons through our field experience, and we also gradually used new weapons that we didn't use before without giving names, and it's normal that we spare other weapons for the future to defend our country and people and the sovereignty of Lebanon.
To another matter now, the economic situation in Iran dominates the electoral scene as the brief campaign to succeed President Raisi begins. The 6 candidates are presenting their strategies to revive the economy, facing severe challenges and unprecedented inflation due to Western sanctions. Mohammed Khatil has the story.
The loudest topic in Iran's election campaign is the country's struggling economy, which has been under Western sanctions for decades. These include a strict U.S. ban on petroleum products and the aviation and mining sectors, and the prevention of the use of dollar in trade with Tehran. During a 4-hour debate, candidates discussed their solutions to these economic woes. The top concern for voters grappling with 40% inflation and high unemployment in a nation of 85 million. Candidate Amir Hussein Ghazizadeh Hashimi estimated that $250 billion are needed to modernize the oil and gas sectors, while reformist Masoud Pezeshkian argued that achieving 8% growth is impossible without normalizing economic relations with other countries.
Priority should be given to lifting sanctions that affect the economy, since the unilateral withdrawal of the United States from the nuclear deal in 2018. It's impossible to achieve an 8% growth without reestablishing normal economic relations with other countries.
Despite agreeing on the sanctions' impact, conservative Ali Reda Zakani, Tehran's mayor, claimed that Iran's economic issues aren't due to U.S. sanctions but can be resolved by reducing dependence on the dollar.
The West is not limited to the United States of America and the 3 European states, namely the UK, France and Germany, which are parties of the Iranian nuclear deal, but they violated their commitments to the deal and aligned with Washington, which unlawfully withdrew from it in May 2018. We seek mutual respect and place our faith in the collective strength of the East, to which we belong.
The economic challenges remain significant, even as outgoing President Raisi's term saw a pivot towards the East, with stronger ties with China, Russia, and efforts to restore relations with Arab countries like Saudi Arabia. The economy remains the key issue for candidates in Tehran's presidential election, slated for next June 28.
The acting head of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya, Stefani Khouri, emphasized the Libyan people's demand for a political agreement leading to elections. In her inaugural briefing to the UN Security Council, Khouri highlighted her meeting with political, military officials and civil society representatives. She deliberated on proposals for the political roadmap and government formation aimed at advancing towards elections.
I've held meetings in the east and west of Libya. I met with political leaders and officials, academics, civil society organizations, women's groups, and military leaders. I also engaged representatives of cultural components, business people, as well as members of the diplomatic community. Overwhelmingly, citizens conveyed the need for a political agreement so that credible national elections can be held to restore legitimacy to all institutions. I discussed the need for an inclusive Libyan-led process to overcome the political impasse and support the Libyan people in achieving their aspirations for peace, stability, prosperity, and democracy.
Libya's representative to the United Nations, Tahir Sunni, noted the ongoing political stalemate in the country, especially after UN envoy position became vacant. Let's take a listen.
كما استمعنا اليوم إلى إحاطة السيدة خوري.
As we listen to Ms. Khouri's briefing today, it is clear there's nothing new or tangible in the political process, which remains stagnant, especially after the vacancy of UN envoy position. The upcoming envoy will be the 10th in 13 years, a record that prompts questions about the underlying reasons for the high turnover and its impact on achieving sustained progress.
Ali Salem Tamek, leader of the collective Sahrawi Human Rights Defenders, has reported deteriorating human rights conditions in the occupied Sahrawi territories. Speaking to Algerian news agency, Tamek underscored the Moroccan occupation's impunity and criticized the international community for failing to uphold the international legitimacy in Western Sahara. He cautioned about potential escalations amid Morocco's severe security, military, and media blockade in the region.
We consider the failure to expand the UN MINURSO mission's task to include human rights monitoring, the inability to international community to enforce international law, and the lack of pressure on Morocco to respect Sahrawi self-determination as key factors in the deteriorating human rights situation. The Moroccan occupation targets civilians, despite international and humanitarian law prohibiting such practices.
A fire in a large ammunition warehouse in Jamana, Chad, resulted in at least 10 deaths and dozens of injured. The fire triggered explosions of various projectiles and missiles, with the blast heard for miles. President Mohammed Idris Deby has ordered an investigation to determine the cause of the blast and accountability for the incident. In South Africa now, Cyril Ramaphosa was sworn in for a second term as president in Pretoria. In his inaugural address, he welcomed the formation of broad coalition government, emphasizing that voters did not give any single party a full mandate. He called for efforts to build a more equal society and protect national unity. Algeria urged both parties in the Ukraine conflict to engage in constructive dialogue based on UN principles and the Charter to resolve the conflict. Algeria's Deputy Permanent Representative to the UN, Nassim Gawawi, expressed concern over the ongoing hostilities impacting civilians and civil infrastructure, emphasizing that no reason can justify the resulting harm.
There are no reason whatsoever that could justify the damages caused by conflict, including the killing of civilians, the suffering of refugees and internally displaced persons, and other harms affecting civilian population. Algeria remains concerned by the deterioration of the humanitarian situation resulting from the conflict in Ukraine and the impact of the ongoing hostilities on civilians and civilian infrastructure. The parties should continuously endeavor to protect civilian and civilian infrastructure, including critical energy infrastructures. They also have to constantly comply with their obligation under international law, including international humanitarian law, and to refrain from any action that could endanger civilian and civilian infrastructure.
Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani attributes several countries' decision not to sign the final statement of Switzerland Conference on Ukraine to their desire to avoid offending Russia and maintain neutrality in the conflict, emphasizing the importance of safeguarding political and economic ties with Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin, at the start of his meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, praised North Korea's consistent support for Russia policies, including the Ukraine issue. Putin asserted that Russia is combating what he described as the U.S. and its allies' decades-long policies of dominance and imperialism.
Korean friends have a balanced and objective position regarding the settlement in Ukraine. They understand the true and initial reasons of the crisis.
For his part, North Korea leader Kim Jong-un stated that this meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin is an opportunity to reaffirm the continued strengthening of strategic communication with Russian leadership. He emphasized his country's full support for Russia's sovereignty. Let's take a listen.
Our two countries' relations have been elevated to a new high level of alliance, laying the legal groundwork for the grand ideas of leadership of the two countries and longing of our people to build a strong country while firmly protecting the peace and security in the region and the world, in line with the common interest of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and the Russian Federation.
The growing closeness between Russia and North Korea has sparked apprehension and concern among Western countries, particularly the United States, which views this strengthening alliance as a direct threat to the strategic interests. Nabil Khazini reports.
With the flags of the two nations fluttering in the sky of Pyongyang and the red carpet unfurled, the Russian and the North Korean leaders walked side by side in a shared path. His last visit was 24 years ago, and this time Vladimir Putin is back to North Korea for a visit that carries a lot, a new treaty that pledges mutual aid if either country faces aggression was one of other agreements that have been signed.
The comprehensive partnership agreement signed today includes, among other, mutual assistance in the event of aggression against one of the parties to this agreement.
I have no doubt that this powerful treaty signed between our two countries will be very constructive, prospective, strictly peace-loving and defensive, aimed at promoting and defending the fundamental interests of the people of the two countries, which will be a driving force to accelerate the creation of a new multinational world free from domination, subjugation, hegemony, and unilateral authority.
In the other side of the world, the strengthening of relations between Moscow and Pyongyang echoed with concerns. Each step made in this partnership was under the watchful, wary eye of the West. On top of the list of concerns is the possible exchange of arms.
We are, of course, also concerned about the potential support that Russia provides to North Korea when it comes to supporting their missile and nuclear programs. This is also one of the reasons why at NATO and at the NATO summit here in Washington next month, we will further strengthen our partnership with our partners in the Asia-Pacific region.
In the arena of geopolitics, Russian-North Korean deep cooperation may benefit both sides. But far in the West, unease has ignited about a possible change in the balance of power in the region.
To sports news now, the teams nominated to win the European Nations Cup achieved deserved victories at the beginning of the competition, as the teams of Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and to a lesser extent England showed a start that confirmed their readiness to compete for the title. That's the end of our news for tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, take care.